stars, rock and rolling through the cool guitars. Chuck's got the questions, digging so sharp, peeling back layers, hitting the heart. Chuck Shute podcast, blowing your mind. Every topic.
That is something that even with strength, because I go to a gym and it's not that I have a personal trainer, but we have the way they set it up is they have trainers and you're in a group of like 4 people or less. And a lot of times it's just me and the trainer, but so I learn a lot from these guys. And I mean, I think that's a big thing is innovating and always looking for the new thing and the next thing and this supplement and this new exercise and this new technique. I mean, is that something you had to stay on top of as a strength coach?
Yeah, if you want to keep on edge, yeah, I think and we'll talk about this as we go through, but I think you've got to constantly be learning. If you're not constantly learning, then you're falling behind. My son he coaches at ASU as a strength coach. I told him not to get into it, but he did. He went against my words of wisdom. And they had a group in that they were teaching and some coaches from the outside. And I said, if you don't steal more from them than you give to them, then you fail. Because we're all about learning. And it may not be on programming and such because it was a high school team that had come in and you might not be able to learn as much, but you can learn something. You can steal something from them. And that's how I look at it, is you're stealing. I'm the greatest thief of all coaches. I've got a master's degree in history, nothing in kinesiology, nothing in physiology. Everything I had, I stole. And I went out and I was brave enough to ask a stupid question, to ask, why do you do that? Because Chuck, what I see is life is a big puzzle and we're always trying to get pieces into that puzzle and put it in place. And if you don't ask that question, you don't get that piece in. But if you've ever worked a puzzle and you find that piece and it fits, all of a sudden, all these other pieces go in. And it's amazing how everything can come together all of a sudden when you get that one piece, but you had to go find it. Nobody drug it to your door, so you've got to drag it out of people. So that's why I love doing this. I love meeting new people and learning from them. And, that's the excitement. I love the interaction with other people. That's one of my favorite things ever. So. Yeah,
when you worked for Pete Carroll, I mean, you won a national championship and you guys won a Super Bowl. What did you learn from him? Because your job, you said, was to spread the culture and his vision. Like, what was it, or how would you describe his vision? Because I know some people were really very critical when he got that job as the Seahawks coach. They said, "Oh, he's rah. This isn't going to work in the NFL. He's just a rah cheerleading coach. And that's not going to work in the NFL." But he won a Super Bowl, so it did work.
But he's okay. You have Nick Saban on one side of the line. You have Pete Carroll on the other side of the line. Okay, you got Bill Belichick on one side of the line. You got Sean McVay on the other side of the line. Okay, why are they all successful? Because they coach differently. They're all on different sides of the line. Different parts of the line. Some are way over. Belichick's way over on this side. Pete's way over on the other side. Why? Because they're consistent and they're genuine. You can't go out and be that. Why has there not been a guy from the Belichick tree that has gone on to be successful in any way, shape, or form? Because they all try to be Bill Belichick. You can't be Bill Belichick because the only person who can be Bill Belichick is Bill Belichick. In Bill Belichick's book, I think it was Patriot Way, he talked about when he got the Cleveland job that he tried to be Bill Parcells. And he failed miserably because he didn't have the answers when he got into quick decisions or looking down the road, because only Bill Parcells knew how far that road would travel. So when he got the Patriots job, he said, I'm going to be me. I only know how to be me. I'm going to be me the best way. And if it doesn't work, fine. I've got it out of my system. I can go back and be a defensive coordinator because I know I can do that. And so he became him. All right. Pete Carroll is genuine and he's different from everybody else because he's rah, which is great because he does it Monday through Sunday. He doesn't put on a show on Sunday afternoons or on Saturday afternoons when he was coaching on the field. He wasn't putting on a show. That's who he is. And then the players get to understand it. It's like, okay, then they buy into the culture. Now, my job in this system was not only to help them physically be better, All right. But it was also a big part of that was to go through the process of understanding why we're doing this. And it's all about the culture that we have built. And see, culture starts at the top, and you've got to have a plan. And that's why so many coaches fail. You look at, what is it, 8 to 10 jobs every year in the NFL. That's a third of the population is culled every year. Why? Most of these people don't have a culture. They never thought about it. They got the job because they're brilliant X and O guys. All right. They had all the answers. They could put all the drum, but that doesn't work in the locker room. That doesn't work in the time in between, in meetings. It doesn't work when times are tough. It doesn't, it just doesn't work. You've got to have a communicator. Now, how many times can Pete Carroll talk to the team during the day? Well, in the meeting, and in practice, he'll talk to guys. All right. But how often does he talk to them? So now, who touches the players as much as the head football coach? Well, the strength coach. I touched every one of them. Not a defensive coordinator, not an offensive coordinator, because the defensive coordinator stays pretty much on his side of the aisle. Offensive coordinator has his side of the aisle. Who touches everybody? Even the trainers don't. Trainers only deal with injured guys. So it's the equipment room and the strength coaches. Okay. So when I message Pete Carroll and I speak fluent Pete Carroll, all right, on how to go ahead and do it. Now, what I would do is take his stories, but I use my stories and my names in there so that what happens if I just parrot what Pete Carroll says and the defensive coordinator does, the offensive coordinator does, and everybody just parrots Pete Carroll, what happens when it comes back to Pete Carroll telling the same story?
Right, it's the consistency.
It becomes static, though. You've already heard it. I've already heard it. I need something.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I tell a different story, Pete Carroll talks about I just used his name earlier today, UCLA, John Wooden. So John Wooden had a quote that be quick, but don't hurry. Be quick, but don't hurry. That way you get to the point where you're supposed to be and you're able to take in all that you have in front of you. Okay. So Pete uses that story. Now I could use another story. So I have two bulls are standing on top of a hill. Young bull says, let's run down and get us one of those cows. Old bull says, let's walk down and get them all. Okay. So my story links into his, but it's a different story. So when Pete Carroll comes back in the fall and tells that story, it's fresh because they didn't hear it for a year. My story, they heard that story, and it linked it. Now the defensive coordinator puts his story in, the offensive coordinator puts his story in, the special teams coordinator puts his story in, and all of a sudden now we're all messaging the same way. But
so how does that work with different personalities? Because I mean, I look at that championship Seahawks team, and you just had such interesting personalities. You had the quarterback Russell Wilson, who was very quiet, humble back then. I think he's changed a little bit since then. We could talk about that, but he was kind of put his head down, go to work, go Hawks. And then you had Richard Sherman, who's like, I'm the best corner in the game. Yeah. And you had Marshawn Lynch, who was like, I don't want to talk to the press. Like, you had these personalities. And I feel like with Lynch and Sherman, they had this like swagger. And I know in your book, you talk about, arrogance is one of the pitfalls, but it seemed to work for them. So how did Pete handle those personalities?
You ever watch wrestling, professional wrestling?
Oh yeah.
With branding?
Yeah.
The bad guy. All right. That's what it is. When Richard goes on and puts on his costume, his uniform, he becomes the bad guy. And when did he do it? With the tip in the end zone against the 49ers, and he got into, all right, that was the bad guy. Okay. And then he talked and he did it. Marshawn, on the other hand, now Marshawn, one of the most genuine people, and Richard was genuine. Richard was an amazing guy, and Cam was amazing, and all those guys, Mike Bennett, and all those guys, Big Red, and I mean, just amazing people when they got away from the limelight. Because what you see as a fan is what they put on the field. That's their branding. Okay. What I saw were individuals who cared about how to take care of myself. How do I elongate my career? Because there's not another job out there that I'm going to make $15 to $20 million playing a game. And so they were amazingly branded. And so that's part of it right there. Now, when they have a head coach that is consistent and cares about them, and the staff cares about them, there's that buy-in that they want to be part of it because it's genuine, it's consistent. Okay? Because humans love consistency. Right? If you look at what Bill Belichick did with his organization and what Pete Carroll did with his organization, two different ways, two different things. But because the people were having success, it was like, okay, I'm going to buy in. I'm going to go ahead and buy into what we're doing here because it's so darn important.
Yeah, I heard you say that the LOB for us, it's we Legion to Boom, but it had another meaning behind closed doors. It meant love our brother. So there was a different kind of thing going on behind closed doors that you got to see.
And that was a cool thing. The way that they interacted with each other, the way they challenged each other. When you see lesser teams that are not culturally tied in having a lot of fights on the field because people are afraid to be challenged. And in Pete's organization, with the way that he developed his team, was that there was a lot of challenging, but it was about competition. Because when we finished here, we're all on the same team. There wasn't an offense versus a defense mentality, except when the ball was in play. And then when they got together, there was great camaraderie, great care, great love of each other because we're all doing this together.
Yeah, didn't Pete? So a lot of his coaching philosophy came from a book about tennis. I can't remember the name. I want to say it's like The Art of Tennis or something. It was some old book, and it was all about just continuing to practice like basic things over and over and over again, right?
Sure. I mean, the fundamentals are the key. That's what's happened to college football now. Fundamentals are out the door. You don't teach fundamentals anymore. It's fast break offense because here's the problem. I get 30 new people, 40 new, maybe 60 new people. I know ASU this year had like 50 new kids come in on transfer portal. All right. And so how can you in 6 months put all this information into them anymore? All right. I told a story about, I don't know if you remember the name. He was at USC, a guy named Cedric Ellis. And Cedric was a defensive tackle. He was a Pac-10 defensive lineman of the year 2 years in a row. Now, when Cedric came in, man, he was a really good high school football player, but he thought he didn't have to get any better. And so we had to work with Cedric to get his mindset that there was more in him that he could give. And so about his sophomore year, all of a sudden he started changing. He started doing things, and I didn't have to get on him nearly as much. And then by the end of his junior year, he was an All-American. He was a defensive player, defensive lineman of the year. Senior year, again. And so we're standing on the sideline at a Rose Bowl, and I said, Seth, I said, what happened? I said, Coach C, I got tired of you yelling at me. And so I just said, what the flip? I'm just going to go ahead and follow what the man tells me to do. And he said, then the worst thing ever happened to me, Coach. I said, what's that? He said, people started following me, and I couldn't slow down. Now, in today's world of the NIL and the transfer portal, how long would an athlete sit in a team where he's getting told that he's not doing things right? Well,
they'll just transfer somewhere else.
Yeah. And then, so will he ever reach his potential? Because we have to sometimes be pushed to reach our potential because human beings are not the most obsessive people in the world as far as working themselves beyond what they think they can do. But there's that envelope. We can keep pushing the envelope, push the envelope, push the envelope, and eventually you become even better than you were. Reggie Bush came to us at 185 pounds. He left right around 200 pounds. His 40 time got faster. How'd that happen? All right. Well, because he became more powerful, more explosive. We worked on his technique because he was God-given fast. But we could even refine it a little bit farther because he had an open mind that he wanted to get better. So you put 15 pounds on his body fat didn't change. So we put in good stuff into him, and he became who he became.
That's interesting that he put on weight and got faster. That seems
counterintuitive.
Yeah.
You work on the fundamentals like you were talking about. what Pete
Okay.
believes in getting the little things right. When we continue to get the little things right, then all of a sudden the big things can happen.
Yeah, because you talk about how it's more important for athletes to move, and they only need you for football. You only need them to be strong enough, right? They need to have the basic strength level. Once they get over that, it's almost a waste. But isn't that different for offensive linemen and defensive linemen? Because you need the push. Isn't the stronger person getting the push on it?
About leverage, flexibility, mobility. Low man wins. You've heard that, right?
Yeah.
How does a low man win? Well, it's not his hips, it's his ankle mobility, which allows the offensive lineman to get lower. So if my guys are more flexible, mobile, and explosive than the person they're playing, they get under their mass and can lift their mass out. Then I don't care how strong you are. If somebody has leverage on you, then you're going to win that battle.
Is there one skill or drill that best demonstrates this ability to move that you always talk about?
Yeah, there was a running back here last year at ASU named Cam Scadaboo.
Oh, I love him.
Okay, so you know he's kind of a diesel. He looked kind of a dump truck kind of guy. He's not pretty, you know. He's a little bit shorter, a little bit stockier. Plays with his heart. He goes to the combine, and they're all thinking, you know, he didn't run because nobody runs at the combine anymore. But there were two tests I've always watched: the standing long jump and the vertical jump. Okay, where you can get enough power to be explosive. You can't cheat those tests. You either can jump or you can't jump. You either can get power and explode up. He went 39 inches on a vertical jump and went over 10 foot on the standing long jump, which are really, really exceptional numbers. You know, if you can hit 11, then you're out of this world. But he was in the mid 10s, 10.4, 10.6 or something like that. And a 39-inch vertical. That means he can go ahead and generate power and explosiveness, which is always transferable to the football field. Running 40 yards, when's the last time you saw somebody run 40 yards untouched on the football field? That doesn't happen. So that test is useless. How does he do on the 10 and the 20?
Yeah.
Can he change direction? Does he have vision? Look at Marshawn. Marshawn had amazing vision. The Beast Quake run. When he planted and cut the ball back all the way through the middle of the line out to the other side, because the ball was going left.
Yeah.
And it should have hit and bounced to the left. He bounced it back, broke 9 tackles up 67 yards.
Is part of that, that's got to be partly, like you said, it's got to be his heart with both Marshawn and Scadabo. I just see these guys that they're not going to quit. Like normal people are like, you get grabbed, you're like, yeah, okay, I'm getting tackled. And they're like, no, I'm not getting, they're not giving up until the whistle blows.
Then you have to be strong enough to run through those tackles.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have to have that base strength. Anything more than that is baggage that you're just carrying. Look at sprinters. They're all ripped up and cut, but they're not looking like bodybuilders. Because if it's all about muscle mass, then bodybuilders would be the fastest people in the world. They're full of muscle. So there's that point that you're strong enough to do what you need to do. So Marshawn cuts it back. And here's the moral of that story that a lot of people miss. All right. He jumps into the end zone. He scores. The seismographs go off M1 or M2 earth tremor. Okay. And here's the story from this. One person with the desire, the passion to do what it took, the desire, the passion to bleed, can move the earth. Okay. So when you take that back to what you do in your daily life, and I'm talking to you, I'm talking to the people that are listening to this, whatever you do, if you do it with great passion and great understanding and great energy, you can move the earth. And that's the great thing. That's what people fail to do. Let me give you a quick example. Do you play cards at all, Chuck? Poker?
Yeah, a little bit. Occasionally a 5, what do you, right. Texas Hold'em or whatever?
So you get 5 cards. Okay.
Yeah.
First card. Nah, it's not very good. Second card. Third card. Fourth card. Fifth card. Got 4 aces.
4 aces? That's pretty good.
And a deuce. All right. You're pretty happy with that. But here's what happens. Here's what happens to people. Uh-oh. It's not as good. It's not as good. It's not, I've got all these aces, but it's not as good. I might fold my hand. Then they go back and look at it again. Oh, shit. I can't see my aces because I'm now focused on that one thing that's bad about me. Think about how many people in this world, look at that. They have all this talent, all this ability, and they get focused in on the wrong thing. They get focused in on that deuce, and that deuce becomes the biggest thing for them. It doesn't make them worse. You're still going to have a great hand, but people get so locked in what they can't do, they forget what they can do. Scattaboo doesn't worry about he can't run a 4.4. Marshawn wasn't worried about running a 4.2. All right. What they were worried about was doing what their job was to do. They looked at their aces. What can I do better than everybody else? And that's what it's all about. We're in this world where everybody has all these great gifts and tools. And in my book, I call them my crayons. Okay. And now some people had the 64 and they even had the sharpener in the back. All right. That they had all the talent, all the problem. Now, if you had a big bowl of all these crayons and you had to take a crayon out for each one of your gifts and talents, how many crayons would you take out of that, Chuck? Just a number: 50, 75, 129, 368. Think about the gifts and talents you have, the things that you do really well. All right.
Well, that's the thing, though. I think not everybody's given 4 aces. So, like, like Marshawn and Scatabo, these guys have insane talent. Like, I do think everyone has a purpose, but maybe not everyone's is like to change the world.
Well, hold on now. So if you have 64, you know how many I have? I've got 8. That's all I got. All I've got. And they're not the little 8 or 64 that everybody else has, because I'm a grinder. I'm going to take my 8 talents, the things I do, I think as well, if not better than everybody in the world. I have these 8. And I focus on those 8, and I use those 8 every day. Here's the worst thing. I'm sitting in elementary school, and I look at the girl next to me, and I had my 8 crayons because my mom knew who I was. She knew I was a grinder. She knew I'd be working those crayons this down to pulp. They'd just be waxed. My pictures become 3D because they'd be so thick with crayons. That water looked like you put your hand into it. And I'd look over at the table next to me, and this girl would have this box of crayons. And most of them had that flat tip. And you know what that meant? She didn't use those crayons. She didn't use her gift. And that's where it goes back to those things. Having your 4 aces, having those crayons. Use every one of your talents every single day, and you can change the world. I'm not kidding you. Conor McGregor just put out there was a quote about him that is about an obsessive ability. He has no gifts or talents, except he's obsessive about competing, about winning, about being successful. If people were obsessive, then they'd have a better way of getting to where they wanted to, because we all have a purpose and we all have our dreams, but people don't chase them. As soon as they get that 2, that's it. I'm not even going to look at the other 4 cards. I got a deuce. How can I win? But, if it happened to be a king, okay, maybe they'd play along. But it was a deuce, and they can't get past that because they can't understand, they can't believe that they have a chance to be successful. You know why? Because the people around them told them, you're a failure. You're worthless. You can't do it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let's talk about then Russell Wilson, because I think that's a perfect example of that, as a guy who was, I don't know how tall he was. What is he, like 5'10", or he's a short quarterback. And a lot of people said, you can't make it in the NFL. You're too short. You're too small. But I feel like it really was the work ethic. Because if I remember reading correctly, I remember them saying the Seahawks had to literally kick him out of the training facility. They're like, look, we need to close. He was there from open to close all the time when he first started, right?
Right. Well, and that he understood what he was lacking. He understood what his deuce was. And because it was about physical size and ability. Okay. And so he had all the leadership, he had a mindset, he had all of these great things, but he worked on that deuce, and he worked on it till it became, a king. He's not ever going to be 6'5". All right. But he continued to work on what what people perceived as his lack of ability. But what he did was he hinged that then with his ability to move. He could extend a play by keeping his eyes downfield. What happens with a lot of these quarterbacks that are movement quarterbacks is as soon as they start to run, their eyes go down and look at the defenders. When Russell began to run, his eyes were downfield, waiting for that corner to come off, to come up to make the play, and he'd jump it over the top. And then he had Doug Baldwin run underneath, who knew that eventually he would come open because somebody would go ahead and chase him. And there was Doug. Okay. Again, another free agent, a guy that shouldn't have been on the team. How about that? You go to the Super Bowl and you have Jermaine Kearse on one side and you have Doug Baldwin, both free agents, not highly sought after,
undrafted.
but they made themselves who they were because of their intensity, their drive, their decision to go ahead and take their crayons. And they didn't have as many as some guys. You have Percy Harvin, who had, a bazillion of these crayons, okay? But Doug Baldwin would go in there and do the dirty work because he had the mentality, I'm a grinder, I'm going to do it. If Russell was there 24/7, then Doug was maybe there 25/8. Okay.
Wow.
He had another day. He was a grinder. That kid, he was one that you actually had to get out of there. He and J.R. Sweezy were like that. Bobby Wagner was like that. When the weight room opened, they were in there doing something, flexibility, mobility, stability.
So what does that look like? These guys that end up being Pro Bowlers and Russell Wilson, all they win the Super Bowl. Like what is their day? Just literally wake up, go to work, and they're in the building all day and then go home, go to bed, and then do it again the next day. Like, right. I mean,
and then, they actually go home and they do recovery and they do massage, and their day, you talk to these pro guys and they're spending millions of dollars on their body, taking care of themselves, because that is the vehicle that's going to continue them on this process to making all this money, because there's no job out in the real world that's going to give them that kind of money. And so they're continually working on their vehicle that gets them to do what they're able to do. It's not just, I'm only going to do it for 7 months and I'm going to go vacation for a while, for 3 months or 4 months. They're working 8 months and hard, and then they go on vacation for a couple of weeks and they come back and they're right at it.
Do you think there is a negative at some point? Like, can they work too hard? I mean, I know you never worked with him, but just you look at a guy like Tom Brady, and this guy, I mean, he's arguably the greatest quarterback. I don't even think it's arguable. I think he is the greatest quarterback of all time. How many Super Bowls? 6, 7, whatever it was. Right. And then it's like he got to this point where, I mean, he probably should have retired, but he just wanted to keep going. He still had that drive in him, and it ended up costing him his marriage. And now he's doing the announcing or whatever. But like, how does he transition from that work, or is he still doing that work ethic with announcing?
I'm sure he's doing the same thing. I'm sure, those people are obsessive. They're driven to be the best at whatever they do. And so when he's in this mindset, look at all the things Marshawn does. He's in films. He has a bar, restaurant. He has his clothing line. He's still obsessive about being the best at what he does. He's not going to put it out there. He's not going to, but I mean, he's pre-game, he's, in that post-game stuff and everything. He is still making his mark in football because he's obsessed about being great.
Yeah. And
it is. It really comes down to being, how obsessive are you about what you do?
It's crazy too that but he would eat Skittles. I was like, wait, this is like a professional athlete, and he is one of the best, but he's eating Skittles.
Yeah.
And I think DK Metcalf was eating, said he ate a bunch of candy too. I'm like, how do these guys, how much does nutrition play a role? Is that something that
Marshawn didn't eat a lot of candy around
just when he got a touchdown?
That's a lot of branding.
Yeah. Okay.
How can I get Skittles to go ahead and, I'll be the sponsor. It's like Howie Mandel with Skechers. He went in and said, I'm a national voice for them. And they call him, said, hey, do you want to be one of our national voices? He's sure. And now he gets free shoes, so, you can go out and really get anybody to buy into what you're doing.
So do they took nutrition really seriously? Is that's a big piece of that? Cause I mean,
you can't look like that without eating right. You can't eat like a dump truck. You can't eat like that. It just doesn't work out that way. So they have an idea of what they're doing. Now, a lineman, you look like Jeff Saturday, played in the NFL, gets out, loses all this weight, because he didn't have to force himself to eat, because he had to have the weight to hold the position. You get tossed around if you're too light. And so, those guys didn't have that natural body size, but they had the ability. Ryan Khalil played center for us. at USC, and then went on to have a great career in Carolina. And, same way, just wasn't big enough, but he continued to eat and do that kind of thing. And he was able to play, extend his career, get paid millions of dollars where he never has to work again. So,
is there a diet that you think works best for football players, like to be successful?
yeah, I think it's really what your body type is. I don't think there's a one, template of if you eat all this, you're going to be right. You got to see how your body uses carbohydrates, how it uses protein, how it uses all the stuff. I think supplementation is huge because we don't get enough into our diets. And so if we supplement, we get the vitamins that we have that we're lacking. When we got to the coaching staff, got to Seattle. Now we just came out of sunny Southern California. In 6 months, we did our team physicals. And every one of the coaches that came from California, our vitamin D levels, we had to get on prescription vitamin D because our vitamin D is because we weren't in the sun, dumped all the way down. And that's just, the vitamin D is a situation. As people get older, they get into their hormone replacement therapy because your testosterone levels drop. And if you're missing that key there, then all the other chemicals, hormones, and everything in your body are now off balance. And so they're able to bring them into balance. And so there's a lot of things that allow you to continue your movement forward. There was a great post. It was a social media post. It was a study that they've done that the stronger you are physically, legs and upper body, as long as you keep your strength up, it'll elongate your life. And so going in, you don't have to squat 600 pounds. But it's that physical ability to be able to stand up, sit down, and move or die. That if we do this, then we live a better quality of life. My wife and I think about my parents when they were 62, and her mom, when they weren't doing what we were doing, and they became older. Now I go in the gym, and it's one of those things that I'm always competing with myself to see what I can do. Because it's just that mindset of myself that I'm always competing with myself to make sure I'm better today than I was yesterday.
Yeah. Do you think that going on kind of an opposite spectrum, like, besides people that are obviously you're working with professional athletes and collegiate athletes who are at the top of their game, and then on the other side of the spectrum, I mean, we have such a terrible homeless issue in America right now, and people are just struggling. Do you think that, and a lot of that I think is due to substance abuse. Do you think that the substance abuse, it kind of kills that drive? Sure. Because if we took that out and we took the drugs away from these people, there's some sort of drive inside of them that should be urging them to move. Like it's our natural instinct, like you talk about in the book. I mean, from beginning of our civilizations, like we've always have this instinct to move. And that may be a bigger problem in just in the country or maybe in the world in general, is that people are not tapping into those gifts or using the crayons, like you say, with the metaphor.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it doesn't matter if it, and I'm not talking movement as in physical movement, geographical movement. It's a spiritual movement. It's a knowledge movement. It's a relationship movement that if we're not continuing moving things forward in our life, then we get stuck. And what happens, and I can't speak to addiction because I'm not an addiction specialist, but I understand what you're saying. That if they took as much time with their addiction to this, to an addiction to physical fitness or knowledge, they would be the smartest people in the world. Well, I don't know if it works that way. But the thing
they would achieve their potential. Again, they're not everyone's given 4 aces, but they could do with the best with the hand that they're given.
Right. Right. And
for some people that might be, being a truck driver. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no shit.
I think that's great.
Being a bricklayer.
They're the blood and transportation system of our world. Why not be the best truck driver?
Yeah.
And then be so good that people are using you so much because you're so good that you now get 2 trucks and 3 trucks and 5 trucks, and you get people around you. You surround yourself with the best truck drivers in the world or in the country, because you do it better than everybody else. And then all of a sudden you have the best trucking firm in the world.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, and I think you talked about,
yeah.
I don't know if you talked about this in your book or another interview I heard you talking about, but just, not everyone can be a professional athlete, but you can still be involved in the game. And I had a perfect example this past weekend. I was at a concert And my friend plays in the band, and it's cool. You know, we're backside stage. I'm like, this is so cool. And there's someone next to us, and it was her son is the lighting guy, whatever they're called, lighting director, lighting person, or whatever. So, and you know, he's getting to live out his dream and run the lights and everything. And she gets to see the show side stage, and you know, it's like you could still be a part of something big, even if you can't be the star of the show or whatever.
Without a doubt. I told my buddy Nate Lau when I was 8 years old, I was going to win the Super Bowl. All right. And then when I finished my college career, I knew it wouldn't be in the NFL, but I knew I could still win the Super Bowl in a coaching capacity. And then I got into football, became a head football coach, and worked through the coaching system, and figured out real quick when my record was 33 wins, 77 losses, and 1 tie, I wasn't a very good football coach. But what I did understand were the fundamentals of the game, what it took to be part of that game. So my focus pivoted towards being a strength conditioning coach, in which I could affect what I understood. I understood who I was. And I was able to do that at the highest levels and winning championships at the high school level, the junior college level, the college level, then the Super Bowl. Because I found my purpose, what I was meant to do. And it wasn't, and here's the great thing, Chuck, it wasn't winning championships. See, I thought it was. I thought that's the end game. That's if I win championships, and when I win that Super Bowl, it's going to be all of a sudden I'm going to be in the top of my world. But it doesn't work that way. Because when we won the Super Bowl, I was sitting on the plane on the tarmac in New Jersey, and I was working on the off-season program that wasn't going to be run until April. And I'd already done it. My staff, Mondre G and Jamie Yanchar, we'd done it all through the season. And I was dotting the T's and crossing the I's. That's how much I was into this. And I sat back, I looked around, and people were still celebrating, or they were passed out. Now, we just won the Super Bowl. 40 years it took me to get to this goal. 40 years. The last person had done that, chased their passion for 40 years, was Moses. Dun. Okay, so, all right, not Moses Malone, but the Moses. And so and I looked around, I thought, what am I doing here? If winning the game that I had been dreaming about, which was the top of my shelf, if that wasn't good enough, then why am I here? And then I finally figured it out. It took a couple of years. I had to go really deep inside. And I finally figured it out. It wasn't winning the championships. It was the process of helping other people being as successful as they could be so they could accomplish their dreams. See, success is about what you do to accomplish your dream. Significance happens when you help others use their crayons to accomplish their dreams and their purpose. And so I thought, I get it. So when my career ended out, when I timed out with the NFL, it was like, I'm done. I'm a dinosaur, which is great because I was a dinosaur. I was a T-Rex during the Jurassic period of the NFL. All right. I was the biggest, meanest, baddest strength coach in the nation because I'd won all these championships, 16 championships I'd won by the time I got out, from a guy who started 33, 77, and 1. And I climbed all the way to the top. And then I finally figured out football was just a vehicle. It was a vehicle for me to become who I was supposed to be, my purpose. So when I got into football, I knew, hey, now I have an audience. I'm not stuck to 100 people. I can now speak to thousands around the country, around the world, so that I can go ahead and help them understand that you are on the right path, but you have to get rid of that deuce and focus on those great things you do. You have to use all your crayons every day. And the biggest thing is surround yourself with great people. See, people in life, there's 2 kinds of anchors. The anchors that stop you from crashing into the rocks, and the anchors that stop you from being who you're supposed to be. And you have to decipher who these people are in my life that are stopping me, that don't believe in me, that don't think I am all that I am. And they don't let me get out there. And failing, that's okay. And I think that's what happened. We talked about what's happened in society today. That's what's happened in society today.
Well, how did you know?
Fail.
How did you know when it was time to give up trying to be a head coach and do the strength and conditioning part? Like, is there some sort of because it's not like you really gave up, you just kind of shifted. And I mean, do you feel like that might be something that some people struggle? I know for me, I feel like I struggle with that because I'm like, okay, like maybe I can't have my own podcast. Maybe I should join someone else's and be part of a team or something. I don't know. Like, how do you know when it's time to quit on something or shift?
Chuck, I was 33, 77, and 1 in 11 years. If you hired me, I could assure you 3 wins every year.
But how many years had you done that for? So
11
okay,
years.
so that's a long time, I guess. Yeah. Right.
I ran that string out. I figured out I'm not good, and I kept proving myself because that's that inflexibility. When you're inflexible, you keep doing the same thing. I think it's called insanity. Keep doing the same thing year after year after year, expecting different results. Then there's a problem. Okay. Then I honed in. What is my passion? What do I love to do? I love the off season. I love working with the players. The season I didn't love. The games, they tore me up. I'm a terrible loser. Then if I lost, I just for a week, I couldn't. And thank God that I wasn't around teams that lost a lot, that we were able to be successful. We didn't have long losing streaks, 1 game, 2 games maybe, but I was able to go ahead and go on those big runs and be happy where I was at. But, it just became one of those things that every day I get up. And I get to do my work that I do right now. I'm busy every day. And I love every minute of it because it keeps me moving forward in my life doing what I'm supposed to do. Chuck, you're doing what you're supposed to do right now. All right? Keep following that path and find out, how can I make it better? How can I do this better than everybody else? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to watch all those other podcasts. I'm going to watch Rogan. I'm going to watch all these people and figure out what is their key. Well, here's the key. They're consistent and they're genuine. All right. When you get those things, when you understand that and watch all these people, that they are who they are, they don't have to be somebody else. They get to be who they are. Then all of a sudden you're going to find out, hey, I'm just a step away. And it only takes one. It only takes one person that goes ahead and flashes you out there. And all of a sudden, you're the guy that people want to be part of, that want to be part of your program. You're doing everything great. You got everything set up. You understand this. You have good questions. You've done great research. Reading my book and understanding that part. A lot of times I get on podcasts and I go, "So did you write a book? Tell us about it." It's like, well, I can do that. I was set for that question, but you ran it right into this, and it's been a great conversation about. And we've talked about football, but the thing is, to me, sports is a metaphor for life. If we look
totally. That's why I love it so much.
Yeah, football, or I don't care what sport it is. When you're competing, when you have team work around you, when you're competitive, when you want to be better than everybody else, and you're willing to put the time and the fundamentals in, you have a chance to become whatever you want to become.
Yeah. Well, music too. I think you mentioned Eddie Van Halen in your book. And I've interviewed some people that have, opened for him or, worked with him or whatever. And like, from what I hear about him is that he just always had a guitar in his hand. Like, he just loved playing guitar and he just lived it. And it sounds like that's kind of the same with some of these athletes you worked with. It's just, they just live it. It's 100% of the time, their life.
And then finding how to do it different. Because you can be the same guy and sound like everybody else, and they're going to say, "Well, okay, that's cross that path." Robert Frost, in his a road less traveled, at the end says, "2 roads diverge into the wood, and I chose the one less traveled," and that has made all the difference. So instead of just following the pack and being like the 99.9, be that 1%. Go ahead and try. And I talk about this in my book about thinking outside of the box. I know it's kind of cliche-ish, but it really matters. What you have to do is recognize, as you're in your profession, recognize once you get into the knee deep into it, and you finally, okay, I understand this whole thing. Not your first year, might be your 5th, might be your 11th year before you finally, okay, I get it. And then you start developing your own. You recognize it, you research it. Now, in my situation, strength conditioning. Now, I was brought up under Barry Alvarez, who went on to become the head football coach at Wisconsin, and he was my high school coach. And so he brought the Husker Power training, because he was with the University of Nebraska, to Mason City, Iowa. And so I was introduced to weightlifting, how important it was. And so I went under John Stuckey at the University of Arkansas, who's the greatest strength coach ever. And I started looking at stuff. And I started understanding what the game of football was about. You had 11 guys here, 11 guys here. And when the ball moved, they all had one thing in common: movement. if I could make my guys move better, more efficiently, more explosively, more powerful, then they were better, or we had a chance to win. If you look at our teams from USC, in 9 years, we were really good. We won the Pac-10 7 years in a row. Went to a bowl game 9 years in a row. How many guys do you think bench 500 pounds during my time at USC? Now, we had some huge first-round draft choices. All right. The answer is 5 total. Teams like Michigan, Ohio State, they'd have 5 every year.
Huh.
We had 5 in 9 years because it wasn't a focus of my program, because it was about building refrigerators. When we played the Big Ten, we played them 9 times while I was at USC. We were 9-0. All right. I'm talking about Nebraska. I'm talking about Ohio State. I'm talking about Michigan a few times. Illinois, Penn State. We beat them every year in the bowl games. Iowa, that because we had smaller guys, but they were able to move. They were more athletic. They were more explosive. They were more powerful. And that's my philosophy. So I thought differently. Everybody else had these record boards up on their wall about, and those are ego boards for the strength coach. Look what I made these guys do. But how does that play into a game when you stand still and squat with all this weight?
Yeah. What's the saying? Like, looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane.
Yeah.
Like, isn't that, you see those
like
guys
cheetah.
every year. I'm trying to remember the one that was, I think the Raiders took him. I'm spacing on his name, but the guy was just ripped. He set up combine records, and he never was very good in
Tony
the NFL.
Mandrich. Yeah.
Well,
Tony Mandrich played for Michigan State. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jamarcus Russell was the quarterback that was all this and all that, huge and all this, could throw the ball, 2 football fields, but he wasn't able to do what it took to become a great football player. They didn't have the skills. They weren't able to move from A to B more efficiently. And so we never had all the biggest guys, but we had athletes that could move, that could get in front of everybody. And you look at Tom Cable, again, the best offensive line coach I've ever been around in my 35 years of coaching. He didn't coach the, double this, double that, and, hopefully we can run out. His is all a stretch play. He was putting 2 of my guys on 1 of your guys, and he was stretching and making you run out of the play so a running back could cut back into it.
Is that why you guys always moved people that were like defensive ends and made them offensive linemen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Squeeze was an example of that. He was a defensive lineman from North Carolina State, became a heck of an offensive guard at Seattle.
Yeah. Do you still follow like the NFL draft and all these prospects? Like, what do you think of some of these guys coming out? I mean, besides you mentioned Scatabo, but like, the big one that seems to be controversial to me is the Colorado quarterback Sanders.
Yeah.
Some people are thinking he might be a bust.
I don't know. I don't think if I'm a GM, I'm not drafting a quarterback. I can go out and get a Baker Mayfield to run my program. Remember the Baltimore Ravens when they won the Super Bowl with all the Saragusa and Ray Lewis and all those guys? Remember
Trent
that
Dilfer?
team? Okay, they had Trent Dilfer. He was told, don't turn the ball over. Okay, because we can get enough field goals. We can win the game 9-3. Okay, just don't give them the ball. Don't give them any extra chances. And they had Jamal Lewis, who I had the blessing to coach when I was at Tennessee as a running back. So they'd run the ball, they'd dump the ball, they'd run the ball, they'd dump the ball, punt the ball. Defense would hold them. We get the ball better. We move it down, kick a field goal. Okay, 3-0, we got a chance to win. And so that mentality can still work. You look what Seattle did with Geno. Now, Geno bounced around the league all over the place. Pete even went back up and traded to get him because he understood he's not a $50 million quarterback. Think about the salary cap. One of these big-time quarterbacks goes down, and look at the amount of money that you just took out of your team. You can't replace him.
Right.
There's not enough money. Because when you take that 25% of the salary cap and you take it out of the works, and all of a sudden now you have a huge hole because so we were successful when Russell was making $600,000 a year.
Right.
When Russell got whatever he got in his first salary, his first big check, all right, 25, 30, the 49ers doing that with Purdy right now.
Yeah.
They've got to dump all this stuff. Look at how many guys we lost. Red Bryant, we lost Meebane, We lost, a bunch of really good backup players. Chris Clemens, we lost from that. All right. We lost all these good players and backups. So now you get guys that are minimum wage and they're still making good money, but still not as solid a backup as we used to have. We used to be 8 deep on the defensive line. When Russ got paid, which was the market, and I'm not throwing rocks at Russ, he just did what the market was doing. We now didn't have that quality around him.
Yeah. So do you think too, it changed because it seemed like his personality changed? I mean, like I said, when he started out, he was such a quiet, hardworking, humble guy. And then he went to wearing these like flashy outfits and making corny videos. What happened to him?
I have no idea. You're gonna have to talk to Russ about that. I have no idea where he was at that.
But you saw that, right? I mean, you saw the chat. Like when you see him online now or an interview, like he's not the same guy that when he started, right? He's changed.
No, he's not there's been a difference. Again, I can't speak to that. I just know who I was dealing with when we came in during that first off season, and my quarterbacks that were guys who were veterans in the NFL had the chance to do squats or do the leg press. The veterans went over to the leg press, and the young lion got under the squat bar and was squatting. Okay, Russell got under the squat bar and was squatting. He understood his leg strength was where his arm strength came from. The other guys were saying, how can I make this the easiest I can?
Yeah, because squatting is a bitch. I hate squats.
It is. It's hard for a reason because it develops your whole body, and it develops your core, your hips, your legs, your conditioning, because your whole body, the whole system is working to get that weight. And so, yeah, it's hard because it has to be hard. But when you're willing to go like that and do the hard stuff during the off season, there's not that much hard on the other side there.
That's almost like the David Goggins Navy SEAL kind of mentality that you.
Well, no. He's way off there. He's that obsessive. We can't put many people in his because he's a special individual. So.
Yeah, that's on another. I'm just so fascinated. I think I'm so fascinated by success and people that achieve the highest levels, partly because I want to do that for myself, but also just because I feel like I want to like learn the secret or so, like, but I feel like maybe there just really isn't a secret. It seems like, and doing all these interviews and interviewing some of the biggest, most successful people, it's like a different path for almost all of them. Like some of them did work really hard. Some of them were given really amazing gifts. And some of them, I feel like they kind of just got lucky. They were the right place, right time, and it worked out for them.
You make your luck. Okay. Yeah. If you continue doing this, you're going to make your luck. You're going to become the best because you want to become the best because you're willing to do what it takes. You're willing to grind. And you know what a grinder is? A grinder is a person who doesn't think enough is ever enough. That how can I be obsessive about, how can I do more background on this person, more background. So when I get to that interview, it's sharp. I'm bringing out information that my listeners will sit there in the gym and listen to this guy talk about improving themselves and making them better. Or am I going to talk about, and on page 45, there's a great quote by Martina Navratilova in which she says that the difference between being committed and being part of it is like eggs and ham. The chicken was part of it. The ham was committed. Okay. Or the pig was committed. Okay. And so, we could do that in the book, or we can talk about the Marshawn being willing to believe that it takes one person to move the earth. Okay. And it takes the person that's listening to this right now. All it takes is you to decide, not just today, but tomorrow, the next day, because it's that stringing it together, because you don't see it. You don't see that change right away. It takes time. And all of a sudden you get perspective. And that's what pain is. Pain is perspective taking root. All right. All that hardship, all the times you look in the mirror and am I doing the right thing? That kind of pain is now you look back the way you used to do it and the way you're doing it now. And that's that perspective that you look back and you go, okay, I'm doing it so much better than I used to. Now, where's my next edge? So one of my favorite stories is Sir Edmund Hillary climbs Mount Everest. And his Sherpa, they get to the top. Now, this is a beekeeper from from New Zealand that just first one to summit Everest. And his shepherd looks at him and he goes, "So now what?"
Yeah, it's kind of when you mentioned
so
the
now what?
thing.
So now you just climbed the highest mountain in the world. So now you just won the Super Bowl. So now what?
Well, what is that? The line that you mentioned in the book, the Springsteen lyric: "A king ain't satisfied until he rules everything."
Yeah. Poor man wants to be rich. Rich man wants to be king. A king ain't satisfied until he rules everything. Now, what's your everything? You talked about being a truck driver. Maybe being the best truck driver on the road, that's your everything. Great. Then be that. Be the best. If we all try to be the best and stop worrying about everything everybody else has and stop worrying about that deuce, all right, that's in our hand, and start focusing on what we can do and stop listening to all those naysayers who say you're not good enough. Now, sometimes you'll prove yourself that you're not good enough.
Yeah.
33-77-1. I
wondered,
I wasn't good enough.
Yeah. I wonder too, let's say if we take example of the truck driver, maybe he's not trying to be the best truck driver. Maybe he's trying to be the best father. Okay, and in that case, like he's doing the truck driver. I saw a thing today where a UPS guy can make $200,000 a year. That's a pretty good way to provide for your kid. I wonder if the truck driver is a better father than, say, Tom Brady. Now, Tom Brady's obviously one of the greatest quarterbacks, but how good of a father was he if he was spending all this time on football? Like, it's an interesting when you look at the balance of things sometimes.
You have to trade one for the other. That's your next question. Do you have to, well, yeah. I want to be the greatest father, so I can't be the greatest truck driver too. Heck no, I can do both. Because when I'm at work,
you don't think there's the give and take with some of these things?
No, I think it's a mindset you have that from the moment you try to go to sleep. And here's the problem. You know when you're in it, when you can't go to sleep because you're so excited about the next day. All right? And that when you get out of bed, you put that right foot down on the ground and you say, thank. You put that left foot on the ground and you say, you. And then you breathe in, Yahweh, Yahweh. And you come out and you understand, thank God I have an opportunity that I can make a difference. I may not have made it yesterday. All right. I may not have struck gold, but I dug that mine a little bit more, and I dug that mine a little bit more. Now, with my son, tell him I love him all the time. I don't care if all his buddies are around. I'll tell him, and he'll tell me back. All right. Because he knows everything I have is for him. Everything he does is to help him and everybody around him. He's really a heck of a kid. And I'm blessed that he follows after his mom. But the thing is, I could be a coach and work with these athletes and then come home and be the best father. And it doesn't, it's not aware. Here's what it wears. It wears on you. But Chuck, we have 86,400 seconds a day that we get to use. Are you using every second that you have to make your world better and to make your family's world better, your spiritual world better, and everything around you better? Too many people sit there in front of the TV and look blankly at the TV. Now, there's not much good on TV. That you can't be multitasking, listening with one ear and working on your next idea of where I can recognize where the problem is. I can go ahead and build the answers to it. I can test these answers. I can go ahead and put these answers and make a change in the world. I can move the earth. That one person can do that because I'm so committed to that. I'm so committed to being a great father. I'm so committed about being a great speaker that I don't have enough time to worry about what I don't have.
Yeah. Well, and I think the multitasking is really key too. I heard you mention that, like, you'd be like kind of thinking about strength plans while you're watching a movie with your family. Yep. And like, I know for me, like I was just listening to your book on Audible and I'm walking, so I'm getting my steps in and I'm listening to your book. I think sometimes combining things like that really can make a huge difference.
It's all about understanding how to put everything in so everybody gets theirs. You know, yeah. I'm not worried about getting mine. Okay. What I'm worried about is, can I help somebody? Can I live a life of significance? Because I've done everything I wanted to do. Okay. I wanted to win, wanted to write a bestseller, wrote a bestseller. I want to help people and I want to be able to touch people. And that's why I have such a great opportunity. I appreciate DDP so much. That's the talent agency and Evolve PR that hooked me up with you. I mean, they helped me reach out and speak to more people every year, and it's such a blessing to be around those people, Dennis and Diana Petty and Alexis Hunter with Evolve. You know, and when you're around great people, they can help lift you up. And what I want to do is when they put me on that platform, I want to then lift people up also, because I think that's why they help put me there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's awesome. And I mean, that's the whole goal of my podcast, is to inspire people, educate, and then sometimes entertain. Sometimes it's just pure entertainment, but you know, I'm hoping to give value back to some people through this podcast. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this. What other plans do you have?
What's that?
What other plans do you have? Are you writing another book, or are you just going to continue?
Two other books now. One book is a kind of a combination of all the. I think I have like 150 blogs that I've written, and I'm sure you'll post the address somewhere. It's www.thecoachcarlisle.com, and I have my blogs there. But take those and put them into a book, and then I do for the people that I'm in touch with. I've got like 100 people that I send out. It's a weekly champions mindset, and I'm going to make a picture book of that, of the different things. And the cool thing about that is that the mindset pictures that I use are all original pictures that my son or myself or my wife has taken while we've been traveling. And so they're all original pictures, and these are in the mindset. But I also on Facebook and Instagram and all of that, I do have my Thursday Thought, which are quotes from me that I put out there, and thoughts that I have. Wednesday Wisdom, I'm a big guy in quotes. I think we're surrounded with voices and choices. You know, the voices that are in our heads that drive us on. Stephen Crane wrote The Red Badge of Courage, and he wrote a quick one, 32 words. It says, I saw a man pursuing the horizon. Round and round they sped. This disturbed me. I accosted the man. It is futile, I said. You lie, he cried, and ran on. And so what he's saying there is that we're chasing our horizon, which is that thing that we're supposed to be, our purpose, our dreams that are out there. And no matter if somebody says, I accosted the man, it is futile because he saw that you couldn't do it because he couldn't do it. And the other guy says, you lie, and ran on. And so that whole idea about not letting people stop you from getting to your dreams, I mean, if we do that, if we all took that step today and cut off some of those anchors of the people that didn't believe in us, you're going to be out and you're going to be sailing to where you want to go. And that's the cool thing.
Yeah. Well, and I think sometimes, I think a lot of times those anchors, like, they may be cut off, but the voice stays with that. Like, how many times does a parent's voice or a ex-girlfriend or boyfriend's voice or friends or whatever, it's like they still they have those doubts in the back of their mind. And to me, I feel like what's worked, at least for me, is just, you almost kind of, for about lack of a better term, you kind of have to brainwash yourself. Like, you have to listen to a bunch of positive podcasts and audio, like, you know, listen to your book or read it, and listen to interviews and podcasts that are going to be uplifting and empowering. And then you really start to believe all that hype, and you start to believe in yourself. And then you kind of silence those voices, those anchors, as you call them.
Chuck, there's studies that say that we between 50,000 and 80,000 messages go through our brain every day.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I'm maybe only 50,000. You know, I don't have the circuitry for the 80,000. You may be an 80,000 guy. And 85% of those are negative. And 90% of those are repeated. You're not good enough. You're too fat. You're too fat. You're too fat. You're too fat. And eventually you brainwash yourself into doubting who you are and your potential. All right. Like you said, if I go ahead and change the narrative to, I'm not going to watch the news anymore, because all that is infighting and name calling and negativity, and people, oh, the world's going to end if he wins or if she wins or whoever wins, the world's going to end. Well, we're a pretty resilient country. I think we're going to figure it out. Okay. And so if we continue our process going through our lives and believing what we can do, and follow you and listen to the positive things and look at the good. I talk to my people about the get-tos. Now, we all have the got-tos in life, the things you've got to do. Chuck, you were a get-to today. I get to do this. Actually, my breakfast was a get-to this morning. When I went to bed, I'm marking all these get-tos down in my life. All right, I get to see the chiropractor. I get to speak with Chuck today. All of a sudden, those got-tos, the things you've got to do, I've got to go to the dentist, okay? But if you stack enough get-tos around those got-tos, all of a sudden, those get-tos are leveled out because you can't wait to get there so you can get past it because you have all this good stuff. If you just line up all your got-tos in life, then life is nothing but a bitch in front of you. It's nothing but uphill and snow and gravel and hard work, all right? But if I go ahead and spread my get-tos around, all the get-tos, if you really, like I said, my breakfast was a get-to today. That's how small I take it. Tomorrow I get to have my breakfast. I get to work out. Wednesday's my off day. So I do all my work on these days. And so when I go back in on Thursday, I can't wait because I get to challenge myself in the weight room. And when I go in, people say, oh, you're an angry T-Rex. You bet. Because I'm competing with myself. I'm competing with the negativity that says, there's got to be something better to do. There's something got to be easy. Yes, there is. But when I walk out of here, I know my endorphins are kicking, and I can't wait to come back because I feel so good about the work that I did.
How do you fire yourself up, and how did you fire up these guys like Lynch and Sherman when they're on the bench press? Like, is there something you say, or do you?
No,
because you said you couldn't yell anymore because of the surgery that you had. So how did you motivate people to push themselves more in the gym?
And the story I had, this is all titanium. And after the surgery, the doctor said, if you yell, intracranial pressure will kill you. Well, that was during that first year. And I had to learn how to speak and coach at this level. And then I found something really hard was that when I was speaking to the team for the first time after the accident, the players actually leaned in because they wanted to listen. And so we're going to circle back around this. Two things. I was genuine about my message, and I was consistent. And what I was consistent about was, if you do this, this is going to happen. And when they did this, that was going to happen. I didn't lie to them. I didn't, blow confetti up their yin. I told them what was going to happen because I knew it was going to happen. And then all of a sudden, they began seeing it. And then we get trust. And in order to get trust, you have to have the consistency. So when I gave the consistent message, when I was genuine, that I really cared about it, and they found out that I didn't care about them because they're number 24, all right, or number 25, or number 31, or number 64. I cared about them because it was Marshawn, it was Cam, it was JR, it was Richard. And when they knew that I cared about them, about what they were doing, I could ask them to do anything, and they would do it because they said, hey, Coach C's here for me. He's on my side. So if you want to be the best and you want people to follow you, be consistent, care about them, and be genuine way you go through it, and you're going to have success. We talked about the first thing. Bill Belichick is Bill Belichick because he is genuine and he's consistent. Pete Carroll is Pete Carroll. Okay. So all these people who are successful people are them who every day of the week, 7 days a week, and you can't hide that. So how do I fire myself up? I can't wait to be able to help somebody else. That's my mission in life. That's my purpose in life. It wasn't to win championships, won them. Didn't change my world, didn't move my needle. But when I come and able to speak with people like you and your listeners, this stuff fires me up, Jeff. This is what I get excited about. This is my passion. This is where I get to really reach out because I'm speaking to not just 100 people in a football meeting, but thousands of people that come in and listen to you. And so again, thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to come in and speak with you and talk with you. This has been a great experience. I appreciate this.
Thank you so much for doing this. People can follow you on Twitter and Instagram and or X, I guess it's called now. And I'll put the link to your website in the show notes. They can get the book. And like I said, I listen to an Audible. It makes it easier for me, but they can also get the physical copy as well. And thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Hey, I love the Audible side too. the guy who read the book did a much better job than I do when I read the book to myself. So definitely get the audio side.
Yeah. Very cool.
Have a great
All
day
right.
now. Appreciate
Thank you so much. All right.
Great
We'll talk-
blessings.
Okay. Bye-bye.
One of a kind, from the rockers to the wise men.